Hi ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 17th of June today, 2018, and it's a very significant day because today, round about today, it's been, well, I'll explain the mass of it as we go through, but today basically is more or less the day that we're exactly on the far side of the solar system to planet X, almost exactly. It's not on the ecliptic plane. You know, if you've kind of watched my kind of like my kind of charting of the overall kind of movement of planet X, I'm of a mind that it first fundamentally really affected us on the 26th of December 2004, which was it was like a 9.1 mag earthquake. You know, it affected Indonesia, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka. It affected the globe, didn't it? Really, it was massive. It affected us all massively. It was huge. And then the next, now, when you think of its position, fundamentally, when we actually come round to it in, what I'm of mind is December the 17th. I think it's December the 17th. I say that. I'm of mind is round about December the 17th. I base that because and it's really, really worth to try and understand how I get to this, because if we're basing things on biblical philosophy and everything else like that and whatever else, and we're looking at the sort of like ancient texts and that sort of stuff, it's great to see how our ancients dealt with it. But if we're going to try and understand this by what's actually happening onto our Earth right now, we've got to really start looking at the fundamental facts of what sightings we've really got. We've got to come out of a little bit of belief and just start looking at the data a little bit. And if we consider, as I've brought into many of my previous videos, if we consider the 8.8 earthquake that happened on when was it? It was on the 27th of February 2010. It was in Chile. A lot of people died. Massive earthquake, massive seismic occurrence on this planet that set itself out as a rare event, an extremely rare event, the likes of which we'd only seen, obviously, in 2004, and beyond that, biblical kind of references to massive seismic earthquakes. They're very rare. They stand alone. And so we had something significant happen there. I, at that time, wouldn't have believed Planet X or any of this, if I'm actually honest with you. I didn't even know that Planet X was part of the whole kind of like 2012 prophecy or anything else like that. If indeed it really was, it certainly wasn't understood. I didn't understand that. But if we go, obviously, we take the Earth goes around the Sun from the 27th of February 2011, it goes around the Sun, comes to the 27th of February 2010, the time of the Chile earthquake, it goes around the Sun, comes to 2011, 27th of February 2011, the same astronomical position, and it goes forward another, how many days, 11, 12, 13 days? 13 days to the 11th of March 2011. So it's like a 13-day difference in astronomical positioning. And we get a 9.6, we get Fukushima. That's, the damage, obviously, the damage, the nuclear fallout, the everything else of that, it was something I believe that was significant enough to say that all those who were shouting out in 2012 that there's something big coming in, I think that's grounds for something massive. We had a lot of interesting kind of anomalous kind of sightings of two suns around there, as we did around 2004. So we had these kind of anomalous, crazy sightings, and of course since then, in my journey, I've charted since the 5th of August 2000 2011, the sighting in New Zealand that caused a big stir. And people said it was Comet Elenin, and then we had the next sighting, Comet Ison, that was supposedly, and it's gone on like that, hasn't it? And that's been the main narrative sort of backbone of what I've discussed has been about these kind of odd, reoccurring 200-day flybys. And then we came to the points when I started making predictions about these flybys. And I'd said that I think we're going to see it massively on the 23rd of June 2016, which was the same day as the Brexit vote. And a lot of my videos came to kind of focus on this Brexit, that whole Brexit thing. And I'm going to give you a bigger part of that story in this later, even though for those of you who think that Nibiru and politics somehow doesn't mix, in many ways you're right. Sorry, I just heard a noise outside the front door there. So the 23rd of June, I was kind of the date I said that we might see it really, really big there, because like I say in many of my previous videos as well, and I know I parrot this out over and over in different formats, but there's always new stuff to bring to this. But there's obviously, I've got very few subscribers overall. It's very difficult to search and find me now on YouTube unless you're doing specific word searches. So I've got my kind of base of subscribers who listen to this. So I try and bring in, and there is new information I'm going to bring into this, even though much of it I regurgitate, and I'm educating myself and opening myself up to new things all the time. But just to recap, because you're coming into big times now, that was the cat, was that I didn't know at that stage whether as it had come in and crossed the ecliptic in round about, it come in towards the sun and under Earth as it was heading towards the sun. 2004, the big tsunami in 2004, crossed the ecliptic in sorry mate, you're all wet. Sorry, I'm gonna have to put the cat down. Across the ecliptic, as it had come under the sun and come up across the ecliptic, what I'm assuming 2010, 2011, Fukushima, and the previous year the Chile earthquake, and then had gone over the sun, which is account for all the 200-day sightings where we see it, where it's as Nibiru circles around planet X, we see it reaches its what I call the 12 o'clock position, where it's furthest away from the sun from our perspective, and indeed from its own kind of like rotations. And we get this momentary, we get this 1, 2, 3 day view of it sometimes. It's a rare sighting. And obviously we only got a small sighting really on the 23rd of June. I hadn't seen that other sighting that Steve put up recently that occurred, I think it was on the 11th of February 2016. I hadn't even seen that sighting at that stage. And it appeared really small on the 23rd of June. And when I'd seen that, and it's really quite important to understand the dynamics of this, because when I'd seen that, I'd realised that the exit, there was no, it was tiny there. And there's been various points in it where I've tried to make, because we don't know when we're talking about an exit, when we're talking about an exit trajectory of planet X and trying to calculate from all these different 200-day cycles, trying to see how near they are, how far they are, what sort of seismic activities going on with them, all the different stuff that happens around them, to try and work out where the hell planet X actually was as we were watching this 200-day cycle that you couldn't make work into any other cycle unless you brought a kind of like another massive object into the equation, because you couldn't make it work any other way. And so if there was this other object, why couldn't you actually see that? Why could you only see the thing orbiting that? And so we got to, I personally got to this, and Virginia was there, my partner at the time was massively there, helping me go through this kind of like this brain maze to try and work my way through it. And basically I'd said, after the sighting on the 29th of March 2016, and we'd had a sighting, and I'd said it's going to come into view, and if it does come into view, it's kind of the opposite of the 12 o'clock position sighting. It's going to be the 6 o'clock position, because obviously you've got, when the sun's going up and down, you've got these kind of areas where you can view the sun is going up and down, but there's areas that are kind of occupying more of a nighttime spectrum in the north and the south of the poles. And so there's these areas where Planet X can kind of disappear out of view, and there's only small areas where it can actually come into view, if you like, because of its rotation. So they kind of oppose each other because of the north and the south hemispheres, because we're on a globe, supposedly, and and I'm going to come to flat Earth as well in this in a little bit. But the band means that it's going to be one side or the other of the cycle from the point of being able to see it from Earth, because it gets lost in the sunshine, in the plain sunlight. And I'd said, just before the 28th, 29th, about a week before, I said you're going to potentially have a sighting. That was the epic shot where Becky Lewis caught not just Nibiru, but that other object, this second object that seems to orbit this dwarf planet that trails this dust. That I have various ideas and understandings of what causes this red dust. I know it gets super red as it comes through our atmosphere, which is why it goes blood red, because it gets oxidized by the ozone in our atmosphere, which is what makes it go this bright. It's iron oxide, and it gets seriously oxidized and goes blood red, just like our blood does. So it looks like blood. When it mixes with water, it just looks like the color of blood. Ultimately, I can only charter the journey of this thing and talk, and that's all I've ever actually done. Obviously, people say Dave's going to say it's going to hit, and I've never said it's going to hit. And please, if you're going to watch this any further and feel that I'm going to be telling you now that you're all going to die and this is all over, that's not the purpose of this message. This thing has come many, many, many times, and we're still here, and hopefully we will still be here. This is not about trying to tell you that we're not going to be here, that this is going to destroy us. We've been through worse, but we transit this thing every, I think, about 400 years. And I'm not going to go so much into the Shakespearean side of, certainly not from the Tempest, which is what I refer to often in some of my videos, because I believe that the whole Shakespeare thing was born as a result of the passage of Planet X. But I do feel that we will have to explore a kind of different direction in this video. And my videos don't come so often, as you probably noticed, and I don't race through them, and they're quite long and quite. I'm not trying to do you a sensational kind of shot to try and get views. There's, you can see there's no advertising on my channel. I don't make any money out of this. I'd like to sometimes, but what's coming in affects us so massively now, and I want to try and explore a little bit more about the process that's going to happen from here, because you're more in control of it than you ever realise, or perhaps than you ever have realised. We decide our fate in this. We decide how this goes. You saw what happened last year. You saw how close we came. Last year, as we came in, Planet X left the kind of its 12 o'clock position when we were in the August position going around the sun. As we approach, by the time we approached the vicinity of Planet X, basically, Nibiru had long gone, and only the residue of the tail left, which was the big shot in the 16th of October. Just excuse my kind of stalling a little bit with this video, because I want to say some things and I don't really know how to quite say them, because I know I'm going to offend a little bit, but I also know I have to do the kind of the kind of astronomical kind of like view of what's happening here before I try and give you the lowdown on the kind of the message I want to bring on top of this, because it's a difficult message to kind of say. This is a bit of a shock, because we're in a bit of a predicament now because of certain things that have unfolded. And but let me just keep going on with this. Let me just keep going on with perhaps it will just come out as I move down the line of just keeping going with the astronomical side of this. You know what I mean? So you can imagine after that kind of, after the 23rd of June sighting on the day of Brexit, on the day of the Brexit vote, and it was really small. And after that, and I'd said, you know, back, like I say, early in March, that we were having all the signs it fully began its exit trajectory. That doesn't mean it wasn't going to curve out, but because of the direction of where it came in, and because I was either expecting it to come straight out the other side or do a slingshot around the sun. And if it was doing a slingshot around the sun, it was going to come out one way or the other, because of the stage of all the sightings that we'd had since 2011. I was finally coming to observe it quite late in its bigger process. I was finally seeing it on its way out. Everyone else had, all the greats, you know, Carlos Ferrado, the 1920s, he was seeing it coming in. You know, it was common talk right up until the 1980s and the late 80s, until the Reagan space program, and the whole thing was just taken into the realms of Hollywood, you know, with Star Wars and Dune and all these other kind of like science fiction movies that kind of made light of the whole thing and turned it into a bit of a Hollywood movie where it all just seemed unbelievable. And then we've just had to watch, and at every stage I've said it's going to flood. We've had major floods, and every time, you know, it's like nothing happened. Just like with the 2012ers, you know, you lost the Pacific to radiation. It's just like nothing happened, you know. And so anyway, I'd made this prediction, and I'd said that in one of my videos, I'd set the path of Planet X coming out on a trajectory, running out at the point. It was going to be curving round, but I originally started it in November, and I think it was I'd originally started it in early November. I don't know if you remember, I said it would cross the ecliptic back when I made a video, and I said it should cross the ecliptic round about my birthday on the 7th of November, early November. And then, because of these earthquakes, these two earthquakes fundamentally these two earthquakes, these in 2010 and 2011, this giving me the gradient of its. It wasn't kind of travelling from the ecliptic over the sun completely perpendicular. It was at a slight angle, and this angle was demonstrated, like I say, by the 2010-2011 earthquakes. Anyway, so from there, then we came to round about the 20. I made it. I was saying the 24th at the time of what did I say? The 24th of November. For some reason, I chose on that day. It was about it was a long time ago when I made the video, but that was just charting the course. It's applying the same thing and just assuming that it was going to jump periodically around about 13 days, and to keep going with that, I didn't know if it would, but I just figured that if we were going to get a big earthquake around about 2016, it would be around about the 24th of November, because of the line of the 7th of November when I'd first made my first big calculations in 2015. And back then, I had just calculated the 200-day anomaly. And I was just, it was a complete guesstimate back then. It was a raw guesstimate based on placed on my kind of connection, if you like, more to a kind of like, I'd had my big sighting, obviously, on the around about, I think, the 28th of August 2015 myself. I'd had that big seismic sighting, so I'd had my confirmation, I'd seen it, and I was putting all the rest of the data together. I wasn't quite believing it then. I just, I was like everyone else who's looking at this, who's on the outskirts of this, looking in, thinking, this is just utterly insane. This is just too much. So I just, and because it's not clever. You don't have to be clever to work this out. You just got to have the courage to look at it and look at all the sightings, and then you start putting them into different kind of like animations or different kind of orders where you have to kind of put them into 3D animations, even if it's just drawing them out on a bit of paper, because when you start putting all these different sightings together, it gets complicated. You can literally draw spirals going over kind of objects and just plot them out in that sort of fashion. And you can literally start building a picture in a very basic form, but it's very, very difficult to work with a 200-day cycle where it's always a different size in the just before the sunrise or after the sunset, which is always when it's seen, or nearly always when it's seen. And so I'd said the 24th, and of course we had the massive earthquake on the 22nd of November in Fukushima again, and it was also simultaneously in New Zealand. And so that had led me to the next sighting, which now we had, obviously, as I'd predicted all of that, as that earthquake had happened and I'd predicted that, it was kind of like, people think you're fear-mongering because you're seeing this thing coming in and you're moving. You're seeing all the patterns of it. And like I say, I'd seen it in a dream, which is what had put me onto it in the first place. And so it was so real, the dream. And because I spent this whole time writing this book called Laughing Gas and just talking about how we approach a wall, but never being told what the wall is, and always asking, and always just being told to finish the book, and not worry about the nature of the wall, because if I thought the wall, it's all I'd be focused on is the nature of the wall, or the wall itself, rather than the message behind this wall. And when we got to the 16th of October last year, 2017, we had all those sightings of two suns and all the red dust, and we had all the crazy sightings. I kind of went through a bit of a transition in that myself, because a lot of people obviously in England saw that for the first time, and a lot of people are catching on to this, and a lot of people are really bailing out of the main story, the big contemporary kind of story that they're being given by the mass media. They've been so let down by that they're willing to look at other stories. There's many people locked onto flat Earth, and when you're locked onto flat Earth, to me, it's every time I've spoken to any person who believes in a flat Earth, one thing you realise is they all have such a different and varying perspective of how they see it, and so many different things, and that all these different things, and nearly all of them come from a hypothetical concept. And when someone takes something like that on board, to me, what they've done is they've spat the dummy. And we all do that sometimes, where we suddenly realise, it's not long before you start realising, especially if you start looking at theories like electric light theory, like the electric universe theory, and you start realising there is no kind of such thing as gravity, that has been a whole cul-de-sac of deception. We like it as a concept, but the concept that there is no such thing as gravity, that there is only electromagnetic energy. And then every space agency is lying to you, and you're just surrounded by lies and deception. Eventually, there comes a point where you have to spit the dummy. And the cat's not so wet now. you have to split the dummy of the whole story. And flat Earth is this perfect construct because it's, you know, people come to it for various reasons, don't they? They come to it either through biblical reasons, even though I don't know if it's so much in the Bible as such, but we know that the kind of the forefathers of Catholicism, certainly Aristotle, who, you know, an apple fell on his head. It wasn't like Newton. No, sorry, an orange fell on his head, wasn't it? An apple fell on Newton's head. An orange fell on Aristotle's head, and you could say I'm a fruitcase. It's too obvious, that one, but you know, it's you know, with Aristotle, he said that, you know, if the Earth was moving, then the apple should have kind of like gone one way or the other, depending on the opposite way to which the Earth was moving. And because it didn't, it meant the Earth was obviously still, and that everything was revolving around the Earth. And you know, that's kind of the backbone in terms of kind of biblical references, I understand it, mostly for flat Earth. But then most of the people, and I've got some dear friends who are flat earthers and would argue with me over obviously Nibiru, because they don't believe in planets. And I would say to them as well that I don't necessarily believe in planets either. Even though I offer enormous astronomical evidence to this, I don't really see this as planets. I see this as a massive clock that we're in. And these are the hands of the clock that I see moving. And I have just understood when something from far away gets closer, we understand that something that far away happened. You know, the Hubble constant that led to us understanding the kind of like, that led to us understanding kind of the, you know, the backbone of the Big Bang. That was kind of like discovered by Hubble in 1929. The Hubble constant, where it says that, you know, the further something is from Earth, the faster it travels. I would say should be corrected, where the further something is from Earth, the longer ago it occurred. And I think that will probably fit true to most people in their understanding of the way in which light travels, the speed in which light travels, which means the further something is away from us, the longer it takes for light to reach us, the longer ago it happens. You know, Hubble's constant actually ironically places us directly in the center of the universe. It just simply recreates the creationism that was destroyed by Galileo's telescope. And flat Earth is kind of a spawn of creationism, in a sense. And when you start looking at kind of flat Earth from some perspectives, I've had some avid flat earthers describe it as a much more of a kind of matrix kind of synopsis to the whole kind of thing, you know. And so what I'm trying to say there is that if you're a flat earther out there, please don't think that I'm talking about planets, because we have to understand that nothing I'm looking at in the night sky is there now. But I know I am here now, and I can sit and I can corroborate with other beings that are here now and offer that as my tangible evidence to that, and my whole experience that I am here now, but by my mathematics and my understanding of light, they are not there now, which I think we could all, if we were understanding light and our rules of light, because we've got to try and be more inclusive with our understanding. So we're all trying to at least understand what each other are trying to say without pushing vital information, which might be more important than we realise, away from us just because of our belief systems don't permit it. We've got to be trying to track our way through our belief systems so we can at least look at information. And so if we know that it's not there now, and I can conclusively concur that I am here now, and I know that it's not there now, then I could ask, well, where is it now? If anything out there is not there now, and I'm here now, then I could wager a guess at where it is now. But in an all-encompassing universe, I could also rightly argue that if I am here now, then all that is out there that is no longer now, where is that now? Could I not argue that that is here now also? And then we come into dimensionalism, these concepts that is all happening here and now. And so from that perspective, can you see how when we see something that's been a long way away returning, we can see that something that existed close to us long ago is returning close to us now, that we can see this as the end of time and also the beginning of time. It's like we are not in a prison, we are in a light prism. And I describe this in my book, Laughing Gas, where I describe this going around. And this isn't a plug to the book, because I've always given the book away free of charge as a digital download, and I'm always happy to do so. And if everyone wants just a digital download, please get in contact with me. I'll gladly send you one. You know, I've sold so few copies of the book that I really don't intend. And I'm going to come to a little bit more of that later. I feel like we've kind of covered a little bit more, even though for my subscribers we've covered a little bit more about the astronomical kind of like what's, you know, its movements, if you like, its astronomical movements as I can give you, because like I say, it left its, what I would call its 12 o'clock position around about the 15th. I think I had it down around about I think I had it down for the 15th of August 2017, 2017 last year. You can imagine as we got closer to the whole system, like I say, it had left that kind of 12 o'clock position, moved way down and was near to the 6 o'clock position by the time we were approaching the Planet X system. It had long since passed. We were just crossing the tail. This time it's, you know, like I say, we can only ever charter this, and we don't know exactly how close or near. Like I say, we could, if we're really fortunate, we could sail past it before it passes us. And there is a possibility that could happen. If not, we are going to be in close proximity to the tail. And this is where we have to look at this is where we've got to look at our ancestry on how they dealt with it. I'm just gonna read you a very, very short excerpt from the Colburn Bible. It's just a little paragraph. Many of you have heard it, but let's just revisit that for one quick moment, because we've kind of forgotten our belief in, or we've forgotten what dragon really is. And of course, there's never been the skeletal remains of any dragon ever found. Every ancient society describes a dragon of some sort or other that is a great force, and supposedly George slayed the dragon around about the 3rd century, which ironically was around about the time when the Romans, who put Jesus on a cross, released their Bible. And before then, our ancients believed in a dragon that came about. And let me just find that up. Let me just pull that up and see if I can find that little bit of the Colburn Bible that just describes the dragon that circles the world about. And I've got a pound of flesh up there, which is a bit about Shakespeare, but one of his other plays, the Merchant of Venice. I want to bring your attention to a few bits of that rather than the Tempest, which obviously I say that Prospero's Ariel was Nibiru. At the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed his tail. It breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold, bright light, and beneath, on the belly, was a ruddy-hued glow, while behind its tail, a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shilling trumpeting which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed wind. Men were stricken with terror, went mad at the awful sight in the heavens. They were loosened from their senses and dashed about crazed, not knowing what they did. The breath was sucked from their bodies, and they were burnt with a strange ash. Now, that's what I'm talking about. This sky monster. And you saw it, the shots of it coming in and going out. Especially going out in kind of like January, February. I think Turkey Report put an epic shot of it. And who else? I was going to say Nigel's viewing thing, but it's not Hospitality. Where's his name gone? Seven Spalding put an amazing shot up, didn't he? Also, and it just went. You saw the, like I say, the massive oceanic movement of water that we had, the anomalous oceanic kind of movements. That started, I believe, on the 13th of August, and then do you remember I think it was on the 17th of August when we had the incredible sighting over Argentina or Brazil, and you had the same day the European Southern Observatory. Do you remember that they'd released a press release about 10 days later and said that they'd picked up a massive gravitational anomaly on that day. As we get closer and closer to Nibiru, that's getting closer and closer to us, you'll notice that we also have a Venus transit occurring almost exactly the same time. And I've got to kind of ask you, we're going to hit that word Brexit again. And this is where I kind of upset a few people, really. Because I realise that all of you who out there that have voted for Brexit, you know, Nigel Farage tells you that the reason you want to do this is because you want to break away from the corporate stronghold of Europe. Excuse me. The corporate stronghold that Europe has, and it's our associations with business are having as a result of being involved with Europe. But when Trump came over to see Angela Merkel, and you have this scene where he does this, he won't shake her hand, this famous scene where he won't shake her hand. And you have that scene where you see the day after Trump's inauguration, and you see him with Theresa May, and he's saying, well, she says to him in no uncertain terms, I think you said you're 100% behind NATO. You know, and we'd watched all that. Alex, what's his name? Infowars, Alex Jones saying, you know, screaming at us, telling us that Trump's going to tear NATO to pieces. And there you hear him say, hear Theresa May the day after the inauguration, I think you're 100% behind NATO, and then
on defence and security cooperation,
it's not very convincing.
United in our recognition of NATO as the bulwark of our collective defence.
Could have been anything,
Today,
I guess.
We've reaffirmed
but
our unshakable
nonetheless, it was
commitment to this
overall
alliance. Mr. President, I think
a confirmation.
you confirm that you're 100% behind NATO.
Brexit is the same deception on our side of the Atlantic. And remember, NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. It's all to do with the Atlantic. And what's actually happened is, if you look at the funding of UKIP, you're going to notice that you see a lot of and so if you look at, say, you know, Sovereign Draw, and it's the kind of the main funding, kind of one of the main funding arms for UKIP, and it's a kind of lottery, and all its members pay into it, and it pays a lot of money to the party. And you'll see the lottery to win is it's a gold medallion, Queen's gold medallion, with George slaying the dragon. And of course, your sovereignty is built on that which gives you right to have passage past the dragon. And UKIP has destabilized Europe. That was the whole process, to destabilize Europe sufficiently to force Germany to change its policies on genetically modified seed. You saw how Syria in Aleppo was bombed when ISIS got in, and they destroyed all the organic seed storage, the biggest organic seed storage in the Middle East. And Brexit was a passage to break the resolve of Europe so that it could be... You see, Bayer, this merger where you see Bayer being kind of like supposedly buying Monsanto out, it's not that clear cut, because it sounds like Bayer is the one with all the power here, but actually this comes under very specific agreements. You see, and we understand the main testing of Monsanto is in Hawaii. That's where they do all their big testings of crops. Even though the headquarters might be in America, ultimately it's just experimenting with plants to see what will grow in the environment of severe toxicity. And those plants that succeed are the plants that they market, and then they pour those extreme toxins onto the land as pesticides. And this is where the experimentation is done. Now, when Bayer buys Monsanto, there is a condition that Bayer has got to sell off a vast quantity of its shares to actually what is the biggest it's the biggest pharmaceutical company in the world. I don't know what it stands for actually. BASF. It's technically a German chemical company, but for Bayer to be able to purchase, the Americans have put into, the US government has put into a whole thing that a large proportion of Bayer shares have got to be sold off to BASF. Now, we don't know what the exact shareholder structure of BASF is, but we do know that there was a kind of like, there was a big crazy explosion there on, around about the 17th of October 2016, which was curious, and you felt like, oh, that's got to be because something or other, someone is being pressured. And when pressure like that happens, to threaten share values of stock, and people are being motivated to sell certain amounts of stock one way or the other, and if they don't sell that stock, then the stock will lose value anyway. And so organisations, I have no doubt, can be pressured into kind of like moving stocks one way or the other. And this is ultimately about control of the seed, you know, because this is enabling genetically modified seed to come into Europe. And Brexit has been pushed by UKIP, which is really kind of, it's just like the days of the Roundheads and the Cavaliers, kind of the difference between the Royalists and the you could call them parliamentarians. Alex, I always forget his name, Infowars, Alex Jones would probably call them globalists, or whatever we want to call them. You know, some might call them capitalists, whatever the title of this, wherever this is coming in from, this kind of, whatever this battle, this ongoing battle is, where ultimately the people have to pick up the guns. It can be seen like, you know, we're told it's a kind of a revolution. You know, we're led to believe that, you know, certainly on the French side it was the French Revolution. On the English side it was the English Civil War. But it's not the first time. You know, the days of the Magna Carta. You know, in 1215 there was obviously an uprising, and then a very similar thing. And I think in 1264, same thing, Battle of Lewes, an uprising. You know, where the monarchy is threatened by what is basically a massive uprising, even though we're not really told that in 1264 with the Battle of Lewes. But certainly we are with, you know, you go to 1381 and Wat Tyler, you know, the first poll tax riots the kind of like, this is, you see what it is Brexiteers have this kind of like, the ones that I personally know, where the real edge of power was coming from was from this understanding that people are sovereign. And so this became the backbone of the whole thing. And so those people shouting out kind of the free man on the landers, if you like, were shouting out sovereignty. And they were recognizing that Brexit was going to give them their sovereignty, except that works on the assumption that you are not sovereign already, and that if you do this and you give all your power over to the Queen, and that is what's occurred with this maneuver, is you are fed Brexit by those who had an agenda to deliver great power into corporate hands, by destabilizing the rest of Europe and make it go below the table of what it called decency. And I'm not trying to incite anger when I'm telling you this, but great karma has been created by giving so much power. You can understand that so much of that depleted uranium, the Queen is the biggest investor in the armament of the depleted uranium armaments, one of them, if not the biggest, probably the biggest. You know, it's very difficult to track it. I once spent a lot of time just tracking it back and realizing just how deeply the Crown has invested into these type of weapons.